Well, welcome if you've just arrived from BBC One. Children in Need comes to BBC Two for half an hour now, although it looks like someone's been left behind.
Welcome to the very special QI Children in Need special. Are you sitting comfortably? Yes! Excellent news, then I shall begin. Joining me in my fairy tale cottage tonight are, in the littlest chair, lovely little Pudsey Baby Bear Bear. And in the medium-sized chair, Ronnie Mummy Bear and Kona. And in the big chair, David Daddy Bear Mitchell. And Alan, who's been sleeping in my porridge, Davis. Now, our theme tonight, appropriately enough, is families. Families, we all have them. We all
Come on, I must get on. I've got plenty to do here. I've got a programme to do.
Oh, my Christ.
And the other place. Get on. Please. If I could ask you to vacate the chair, please. I've left a large gap in a big studio down the road. Thank you.
Terry Wogan. Well.
Oh, shucks.
Fabulous to have you all the way from BBC One.
Oh, for goodness sake, no. I've come to this poor little place just to make my contribution to a humble little programme. Meanwhile, I want to continue to make your contributions. Keep that money rolling in.
Well, now, you all know the rules. You all have buzzers. Ronnie goes like this.
Sisters, sisters, there were never such devoted sisters.
Thank you. Family theme, you see. David goes.
Daddy,
Terry goes. That was lovely. And Alan goes.
Oh, my old man's a dustman. He wears a dustman's hat. He wears gold grimy trousers and he lives in a council flat.
Everyone started clapping along.
Yeah, you see?
The people want knees up.
People, they do.
They don't want information-based panel shows. They just want a knee up.
This crowd looks to me like they could do a Mexican wave in a minute.
No. Well, let's start with some family wisdom. I want some old wives' tales. Do you know any old wives' tales? Tell me some dubious tales of your grandmothers.
My granny always had a tale or two to tell. You know, I remember her saying, "Love flies out the window when poverty walks in the door."
Ah.
And then the other one was, "It doesn't matter whether you're rich or whether you're poor, as long as you have money."
Cheese gives you bad dreams.
Cheese gives you bad dreams, is
My
one.
granny had so many, they've kind of become a blur in my head. They were all kind of things like, the higher cows build their nests up trees. The redder a shepherd's face will be if he likes butter, unless the wind changes direction, in which case he'll turn blind and catch a cold, unless he puts vinegar on it.
Yes, there's so many that involve catching a cold and going blind, don't they?
Well, going blind, definitely,
Yeah.
yes. What makes you blind?
That's one.
But you know, I have contact lenses, so I can see fine.
Yeah.
So essentially, contact lenses are the charter.
Is there much to see?
No, to be honest. No.
What about a crow follows a busy squirrel?
Eating your
Granny
crusts.
says, eating your crust puts hairs on your chest.
Yes.
That's what my granny used to tell me and my two brothers.
But that would
Why
be-
would she tell me
Yes.
that as a woman?
It's
I think
basically
the
to
fact
make
she was
your-
called the Wolf Woman of Wick may have something to do with it.
Well, now, here's a burning contemporary issue and a constant niggle. What have artists and composers ever done for children in need?
Lots.
Lots. Like?
Tchaikovsky and Prokofiev did a sponsored skip across the Volga, dressed as Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Manet sat in a bath of snails for a week. Rachmaninoff ate 48 pies in 68 hours while playing his second piano concerto. Need to go on.
Well, it's a damn good start. Do you know, in some ways, the original Children in Need for London was the creation of an extraordinary institution in the 18th century. Do you know what I might be referring to?
It was a foundling hospital.
There was a foundling hospital. There was a man called Thomas Coram, who was one of the great benefactors of the age, because we're talking about an age in which 75% of all children died before the age of 5 in London. 90% of all children who were born in workhouses died before they were 5. So this man Coram, who was a successful merchant, badgered people, and two of the most influential people who allowed this place to be built were Hogarth, the great artist of the day, and Handel, the composer. And they did extraordinary work for this hospital. It was hugely successful. And there were so many at the founding hospital that they had to have a lottery. They literally had a lottery, and there's a ball taken out of a bag. If it's a white ball, child goes straight in. If it's a red one, they're on a waiting list. If it's a black one, sorry, we can't take your child. Right. And then in 1756, the government said, no, we'll guarantee that every child can go into this hospital, every child. And that sort of worked pretty well. But what's in a sense phenomenal is that we have lived, and our parents have lived probably, and for most of us, our grandparents even, have lived in an age in which such a thing is inconceivable. But we are a minority of the human race. Most of the human race has lived with unspeakable suffering, especially for children.
There's still unspeakable suffering from children all over.
There is.
All over this country, and that's why Children in Need comes in.
Exactly.
I mean, we raised, what was it? 35 million last year. We'd need to raise 150 million to make a real difference to the kind of suffering that goes on.
Yeah, here. Thank you very much. Excellent. So, the artist Hogarth and the composer Handel helped to establish the foundling hospital, the 18th century's answer to children in need. Now, which of these ladies is more likely to bite off a baby's head? David.
I think it's Anne Widdecombe because she's a Catholic.
Terry, defend your
I'm not
faith.
actually saying that Catholics are more likely to bite off babies' heads, but I imagine that might have been the sort of thing that was once said.
I think that originally, of course, Margaret Thatcher was known as the milk snatcher, taking the pinter out of the innocent babies' mouths. But I don't think it was her. I agree, I think it was Anne Widdecombe. But I think she's misquoted. Because one time somebody said to her, Anne, are you hungry? And she's a good little trencher woman. And she said, hungry, she said, I'd eat a baby's arse through a wickerwork chair. And that is how it grew up. From arse to head, you know. But, so that's an easy enough mistake.
It's so easily done.
What's the wickerwork chair? That's an odd sort of... Not only would I eat a baby's arse, I'd do it under awkward circumstances. with chopsticks through a wickerwork chair. It shows... With one hand tied behind my back.
It shows how little you know of roughage, lad.
He's a stranger to the lavatory, I fear. Now, the reason that we have these two women...
I think I know.
Yes, tell.
I think it's something to do with jelly babies.
Oh, my dear, you're so completely right.
Because women who have had children will basically take a jelly baby and will check it for nappy rash and cradle cap and attempt to get it into a good school before eating it. And then women who haven't had children will obviously can enjoy the benefits of jelly babies, knowing that they can give them back at the end of the day when they've had enough.
Ronnie, it is about jelly babies. But the odd thing about the research is that it's mothers who've had children who bite off the heads. And women who don't. So lots of points for knowing it was about jelly babies.
It's an extraordinary mentality, isn't it, that you actually inquire into which part of the jelly baby you bite off first.
No, it does seem strange.
Well, a lot of universities are short of funding. So they have to investigate stupid things.
Come on, boys.
Jesus.
Of course.
And
I'll have a black one if I may.
There you are. This morning I get a whole bowl to myself. 3 million of these are eaten every week, you know. No.
What's the powdery substance?
Cocaine and DNA. That's it, yeah. Enjoy. Yeah. The powder, of course, is starch. It's so you get the jelly out of the mould. That's what the powder is for. Now, back to family relationships. Ronnie, what do newborn babies like best?
Well, as a mother of a newborn, I'd like to say crying.
Crying.
The thing is about babies crying is you just think, what have you got to cry about? You haven't got any financial problems, you've got no relationship problems, you're not haunted by mistakes that you've made in the past. Do you know what I mean? We should be crying on an hourly basis.
You don't have to get out of bed to go for a poo.
No, everything's
just lie
provided
back.
for you. Lie back.
Yeah.
You don't have to poo, you're squished, you're adored. Make the most of it. What is your problem? Make the most of it, because you'll look back at this and it'll be the happiest days of your life.
Maybe they're stressed about all the stuff they've got ahead of them.
Yes.
Maybe they can pick up on the
In
stress of all the
hindsight.
adults, sort of going, oh my God, this is a nightmare. I mean, it's okay now, but this is going to get worse before it gets better. One day, if I'm not careful, they're going to say I'm not allowed to shit in my bed anymore. They'll dress it up as growing up or something, but in fact, it's the first stage of a long surrender.
You never stop soiling yourself.
Not if you've got
better.
If you've got an ounce of self-respect, keep soiling yourself.
Someone told me that 90% of the attention you garner in your life, you receive under the age of 3.
It's a thought, isn't it? Not for us who are on television, surely. Surely not us. No, that could be right. Now, that's an interesting point, because a lot of mothers have been led to believe that it's incredibly important at the moment they give birth that there's a bonding process. But the interesting thing is that babies don't bond with their mothers, particularly in the very first days, that actually they respond apparently as much to the cries of a rhesus monkey as to the noise of their mother.
Well, all that hard work.
Yeah, I know.
Later.
Get a rhesus monkey in.
Later they get used to you. They get used to you. They get used to your smell after a few weeks, and they do like you.
Now that child's clearly not going to bond with them.
But you're actually crawled towards the age where you can again soil yourself with impunity. Surely.
What do you mean crawl towards it?
Oh no!
I'm just...
Oh no!
That's uncomfy. I'm lucky I have the incontinence pads.
Yeah, I'm so pleased. Is there a tenor gentleman? Is it only tenor ladies?
That's a thing. Why is it in those ads? What is it about laughter that makes women wet themselves? I mean, you have the ads, they're jollying about, and then...
It is odd.
I like it when babies saw my nephew, when he soiled himself, he put his hands on the high chair like that.
They get great concentration on their face.
While mothers may form an immediate bond with their baby until they're 3 months old, babies respond equally well to the call of rhesus monkeys, as a matter of fact. Now, what am I describing here? You have to listen carefully. Sustain, followed by ululation, followed by sustain, but at a higher frequency, followed by ululation, followed by sustain at the starting frequency.
The Arctic monkeys.
Very good.
Not Handel's water music, is it?
It's no, it's a sound, and it's associated with the jungle. It's associated with the jungle in...
It's Morse code for I'm stuck in the jungle, please save me.
Think films.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yes?
Yes, it's the noise Tarzan makes.
Yes, well done. Let's hear the real one.
Oh, Johnny White.
There you are.
So I could have just opened my mouth and you could have dubbed that on later.
Yeah, exactly. The thing that's noticeable about that is that it's actually the same forwards and backwards. We can hear the same backwards now. So it's a kind of simian palindrome. And it was done by the MGM sound technician with... Weissman always claimed it was his voice, anyway. But that was his yodel, that was his Tarzan
It's a lot,
yodel.
when you hear it now, as distinct from your memory of it, it's a lot more savage and difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's obviously no human voice, rather an ape man.
Yeah, exactly. One who'd been raised by apes. What's the most famous line from a Tarzan film?
That one.
Oh, me, Tarzan, you, Jane.
Yes, except of course it never happened.
What?
No, and they
Why
never
do these films always forget to put their most famous line in?
It is silly, isn't it? No, yeah, exactly. No play it again, Sam. No, you dirty rat. It's just one of those odd things. Now, we all know about the good work done by Children in Need and, of course, Terry's morning show. But how has the Eurovision Song Contest made Europe a better place?
How has it made it a better place? Because it has, as you can see, the dove.
Yeah.
It has brought together the nations of Europe.
Has it? Ah, it's divided east from west. I mean,
it has brought together the nations of Europe on wings of song.
Whether they like it or not.
You only have to listen to my commentary to realise how much I believe that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. One of the few Eurovision Song Contests I remember incredibly well because the winners are one of the most famous pop groups in the world there's ever been. That was ABBA, and that was in the year...
1974, Brighton.
1974, exactly, with the song...
Waterloo.
Waterloo, a great song. But there happened to be a song that Portugal provided that year. They came second from bottom. They only got 3 points.
It was called Paddington.
But it was one of the most important Eurovision songs ever written for an extraordinary political reason.
Are you saying that that was the signal for the Portuguese Revolution?
Yes, I am. It was called E Depois de Adeus, After the Goodbye, sung by Paulo de Carvalho.
I have to tell you that I think you got the year wrong. It was the following year, when it was being held in Sweden, after ABBA had won, that was the Portuguese Revolution, and they came out with guns with carnations in the barrels of the guns.
Because it was called the Carnation Revolution, wasn't it? We yield to you, none knows better than you. But isn't it wonderful? It was, that song was used because a man called Salazar, or at least his party, had run Portugal for years and years. He didn't technically style his regime a fascist one, but he certainly gave 3 days national mourning when Hitler died, for example, so yes. I think you can call him right-wing.
He wasn't quite Franco, but he was pretty
He was pretty close. Yeah. Bizarre leader, because he had a stroke. And after his stroke, he was relieved of his command, and a man called Caetano became Prime Minister, but they never told Salazar. He went to the grave thinking he was still running the country. They just took his power away from him, and he still thought he was running, was signing things, but it was of no importance whatsoever.
Well, I think isn't that nice? That's such a lovely way of doing it.
That could be a fantastic scheme for so many dictators. They don't get out much. All you need is a noisome crowds playing on a tape outside, big office, lots of things to sign. Well, I hope when I go mad that someone pretends I'm in charge of a large country and gives me lots of things to sign, rather than just sedates me and sticks me in front of a window.
So, how long do you have to have lived in a country to represent them by singing the song?
You don't, because Celine Dion represented, I think...
Switzerland. But she's obviously not Swiss.
She's Canadian or something.
It's the competition between songwriters, isn't it? It's supposed to be anyone, doesn't matter who sings it.
So there's an Australian called Johnny Logan who won twice for Ireland.
That's right. But his father was an Irish tenor.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, Patrick O'Hagan was Johnny Logan's father.
He used to sing in a very high voice like that all the time while winking roguishly.
How totally distressing. Well, the one thing we rule in, of course, is language, at least. 20 and a half, if you count some songs that are sort of bilingual, of the 55 winners have been in English.
The French were furious this year that their singer chose to sing in English.
I love it.
Because they lost, it used to be the lingua franca, and it isn't anymore.
No,
the world is Anglophone.
But isn't it just disgusting? They give us such a bad time and they use our language. They should be taxed.
An English tax! I love it!
They should be taxed. In fact, it's a very good source of revenue for us, potentially. All these countries that are so nationalist. I mean, look at America, US, Australia, they're also glorious nationalists. It would make up their own bloody language if they want to borrow ours.
Now, the 1974 Portuguese entry, E Depois de Adeus, was used as a signal to start the military coup that overthrew the 42-year-old dictatorship of Antonio Salazar in 1974. 4. So, one of the few...
5?
One of the... Ignore him. So, from one of the few grim regimes without a general involved to an absolutely beastly experience with one in the iron grip of general ignorance now. So, can you name the family in Swiss Family Robinsons? Yeah.
Robinson.
No, indeed. No, there is no family called Robinson in Swiss Family Robinson, no. Oh. Swiss Family Robinson is a book by a man called Weiss, a Swissman.
Is it a reference to Robinson Crusoe?
To reference to Robinson Crusoe. They're a Swiss Robinson. Yeah, that's what it is. They don't actually have a surname. They're called Ma and Pa and Ernst and Franz and names like that. But the weird thing is there have been films in which they're called the Robinsons. It's just a misapprehension.
Are they even Swiss?
Well, they are Swiss. They are Swiss. When it was translated by William Godwin, he called it the Family Robinson Crusoe. Because that's the idea, it was a Robinson Crusoe family, as it were. A family undergoing a Robinson Crusoe experience. It's a good title. And that got mysteriously changed in 1818, 4 years later, to the Swiss Family Robinson. A third of all the film and TV adaptations have them as being called Robinson.
I think they need a better title altogether.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just like a sort of shortening of the pitch.
It is,
isn't it?
isn't it?
Swiss Family like Robinson Crusoe. It's a Swiss family meets Robinson Crusoe.
Exactly.
The two most entertaining things we can think of, Robinson Crusoe and a Swiss family. This is dynamite. As long as we can come up with a good title.
There you are. Now, what do you call a boomerang that won't come back?
A Kylie.
Sisters.
Yes, a Kylie is
Kylie.
exactly what it's
A
called.
Kylie.
A stick.
No. Yes, a Kylie is exactly what it's called.
Yeah.
And people say, well, hang on, surely which case... Well, they call Kylies after Kylie Minogue or whatever, but Kylie was a fairly common girl's name in Australia before Kylie Minogue, and it is named after that, the boomerang that
I
doesn't come
thought
back.
they used them to throw them at things, but it turns out they throw them behind birds and they think it's a hunting bird and it drives them towards them with the spears.
It drives them towards nets. You're absolutely right. For some reason, birds are spooked by this thing sort of going near them. They think it's a hawk.
And
think it's a
don't
hawk
try
or
and catch
a bird
it when
of prey.
it comes back, because
That's
it will
right.
take your hand off.
Oh, no, you don't. A boomerang that won't come back is a Kylie. Most Aboriginal tribes had both returning and non-returning throwing sticks. While we're on the subject, who knows where the word kangaroo comes from?
I do. When Captain Cook first went to the Antipodes, nobody had much of an idea what the natives were talking about, you see. And one of the chaps who worked for Captain Cook, he said, "What is that animal called?" And the Aboriginal said, "Kangaroo." And it was only several years later, when they learned a bit more of the Aboriginal language, that they found that kangaroo means, "I don't know."
Look behind me there. I'm so sorry to get you through that. Because we knew that you thought that was the case. It is a commonly held fantasy. It's sadly not true. The problem is this story got twisted, and in fact Gangaroo is the Gugu Imithir language, and it means a large black or grey kangaroo. 1,400 miles inland, when the Captain Cook's party got, they asked whether there were any kangaroos of a tribe who were, as I say, 1,400 miles away. There were 200 Aboriginal languages at this point, and they had no idea what the other language kangaroo meant at all. So it got confused, and this story arose that it actually was, I don't know, but I'm afraid it isn't true.
Well, I prefer it.
I prefer your story. We started with old wives' tales. Let's end with that old feast of family fun, maths homework. What does this prove? You may notice it's not written in usual mathematical language.
Yes. It's not a message from Al-Qaeda.
No, it's not. It's written in symbolic logic, if that's of any help to you.
Has it got something about the Portuguese coup starting in 75?
Not about that. Who was the great logician of the 20th century, the great British master of logic
Derek
and
Trotter.
mathematics? Sorry? Derek Trotter. He was also a great campaigner against nuclear weapons.
It's Bertrand Russell.
Bertrand Russell, Lord Russell. There he is, Bertie Russell.
He
Marvellous
wasn't,
figure.
it wasn't a barrel of laughs, was he?
They say that his breath was not good. I mean, that's in the biographies of
That it
Keynes and his
wasn't good.
contemporaries. He had very bad breath. But he was a remarkable man. He wrote Principia Mathematica, which was a book determined to reinvent maths, because set theory produced all kinds of paradoxes which seemed to suggest that nothing could be proved or complete or consistent in mathematics, which was a huge shock And so he had to set out to prove mathematics worked from the very first principle.
Very, very good at Sudoku.
He was, oddly enough, he was said not to be that good at mental arithmetic. But so in order to prove mathematics from the very beginning, you have to establish the first principle of arithmetic. And that piece of symbolic logic was proving that 1 + 1 = 2.
It's a bit late, the 20th century, to prove that, I'd say.
You're a bit late.
We've got quite a lot riding by the 20th century on 1 + 1 being 2, you know. Quite a lot of engineering happening, quite a complex international economy.
Oh,
If you find out that it doesn't equal 2, what do? Just burn everything. Because God knows anything could fall on our heads. Money, you might as well eat it. Forget civilization.
Well, there is a general thought that if what were considered to be the sound foundations on which all mathematics rested were proved to be rocky, that it may mean that some of the ultimate answers of the universe will never be answered. But it's rather splendid to think you would give so much effort into proving 1 + 1.
What an extraordinary achievement.
It is.
You just have to bring up his halitosis.
I know, that was silly of me, but I love that.
You know, it
He's
comes to something where you think you've achieved that.
Can you imagine meeting him at a party?
Old
though?
Stinky Russell.
I met this bloke at a party, he stank. And when I asked him what he did, he said he proved that 1 + 1 = 2.
I know. But it's very important. It's a very important principle to understand is that you can be gossipy about someone's private hygiene and think they are one of the greatest and most towering intellectual heroes that you could ever worship at. The two don't rule each other out.
Similarly, you can say that someone has very nice breath who is an idiot.
Exactly right. Precisely the point. But Bertie was a great man. And we should be proud of him.
Bertie to you.
Bertie Russell. So, anyway, there we were. We were looking at Bertrand Russell's proof that 1 + 1 = 2, and let's see if our scorers know that. Because as our collective grandmothers almost certainly warned us, all good things must come to an end. So it's now time to add up the final scores. My word, my word, my word, my word. This week's big bag of jelly babies, as it happens, with +5 goes to Ronnie. Ronnie Ancona is our winner. We offer a consolatory sherbet dab to David Mitchell with +3. And with -6 points in third place, a licorice bootlace to Alan Davis. Oh dear. But I'm afraid, boys and girls, that on the QI naughty step tonight, with -9, Sir Terry Wogan.
Is this because I pointed out the error in 1975?
We wouldn't be so mean or so low. So, children, that's it. Before we all climb the wooden hill to Bedfordshire, it's good night from Terry, David, Ronnie and Alan and me, and we leave you with the final piece of homespun wisdom from George Burns. Happiness is having a large, caring, close-knit family in another city. Good night.
And of course, Terry will be hot-footing it back to BBC One shortly as the Children in Need fundraising party continues. The next here on BBC Two, the key stories of the day in Newsnight.